Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome to this evening's call. We are up to number 4 for the deeply satisfied woman immersion. And tonight we are talking about expanded versus fixed thinking. And this is such a fun topic, and it's an interesting one to play with because we're coming up out of the body, which is where we've been hanging out in these last 3 weeks, and we're coming up into the mind more. And I'm going to talk with you this evening about how you integrate the mind and the body, because that's a really important skill to have. But in a lot of traditional personal development, the body is neglected and overlooked, and the mind is like hyper focused on. And so these mindset tools and being able to expand your perceptions are really valuable, but we must have a root system down into the body that effectively connects the two. Otherwise our transformational work only goes so far and will only stick so much if it's exclusively in the mind. So before we dive in, I believe everybody who's here has already been to some of these masterclasses, but there have been some ladies sign up between last week and this week who might be watching this recording as their first dip into this experience. So if that's you, if you're tuning into the replay, welcome. Thank you so much for joining this adventure. Obviously, this call is being recorded and it will be shared with the ladies who aren't able to attend tonight. So please bear that in mind when you're choosing what to share if you do share. We're going to go for about 60 minutes. And if we haven't met yet and you're watching this recording for the first time, thank you so much for being here. And my name is Nicole Stewart. I am a coach for ambitious and high achieving women, and I support those women to create deeply satisfying lives, which is why we're here. Because you've all said yes, that is something that I want more of in some way, shape or form in your lives, which is really precious. And I feel delighted that you are investing this time into yourselves, but also that you're choosing to spend it here with me, of all of the many places in your life that you could be spending this hour. So thank you so much for being on the adventure with me. It's really precious. So let's get into expanding your thinking. Expanded versus fixed thinking. And we're going to peel back the layers on this one because it is multi-layered. Now, you have all heard me talk for the last 3 weeks a lot about feeling yourself, about learning to be more in your body. You might have heard some interviews with some of my wonderful clients and past clients who have talked about the transformation that they've received from learning to be more in their bodies. And so when we're talking about the nervous system and we're talking about that, electrical circuit that sort of makes up your body, it's one of the ways your body communicates with itself, with you, and one of the ways that you control your body and inhabit your body. And that electrical circuit can carry, or you'll have the capacity for, so much charge, we could say, if we're thinking of this as an electrical circuit. And you might be familiar with what happens in your nervous system when you get too much voltage running through the system. Maybe you're somebody that gets really anxious, maybe you shut down and avoid. There's a whole variety of different ways that people cope with that stress or that pressure. But if we're looking at the anatomy of the nervous system, there are two core types of nerves. Oh, there's lots, but in this particular lens that we're looking through, you have afferent nerves and you have efferent nerves. Now, our afferent nerves are the nerves that are communicating from your brain and spinal cord out to the body. Got that the right way around? No, efferent nerves are your brain to your body, and afferent nerves are from your body to your brain. I was backwards. And it's amazing that how many more nerves or how many more nerves communicate from your body's tissues back to your brain compared to how many go from your brain and spinal cord out to your body's tissues. And that's because your body and all of its tissues are so much more expansive than your brain and spinal cord, and gather so much information from your environment that then needs to be communicated back up to the brain and spinal cord to let you know, to let your system know, this is what's going on around me. We're safe, or we're some version of not safe. Now, the ratio of those nerves, it's approximately 80% that is afferent, meaning that they're transmitting information from your body to your brain compared to from your brain to your body, which is amazing. And it's why I talk so much about being in your body and being able to inhabit and influence and have a supple, resilient, and flexible nervous system that will create really significant, that will have a really significant impact on your creation of the life that you want to lead, the feeling tone of the life that you want to lead, because we're talking about sensation in the body here and your ability to be with whatever is happening in your life and the world around you. So I'm prefacing our climb into the land of mindset related things. Welcome, Catherine and Tarina. Thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome. All good. And so I'm prefacing this climb into the land of mindset by talking about the body, because we are going to be talking about, I want you to imagine that nervous system that extends down into your body as like a root system from your mind. If your mind is a tree, you've got this root system in your body, and the more nourished your root system is, the more like healthy and well watered and nutrient rich the soil is, the healthier that nervous system is going to be, the more resilient and flexible and able to be with life storms you're going to be, and the healthier the tree that grows from that nervous system is going to be as well. And if you imagine that the fruits that come off that tree are the things that you create in your life, and the results that you're working towards, they are going to be much healthier as well and more viable if they're growing on a tree that has a root system that extends down into soil that is really rich and fertile. Now, I'm using a tree analogy, but the way that you can think of that in terms of your body is having an internal environment that is like both physically very healthy and nourished in terms of what you put in with food and water and all of the physical environment things, but it's also how much stress you're living with, and what your internal relationship with yourself is like. So this, I'm sort of setting the scene for us here, because we're going to go and we're going to look at the tree. I don't know how to do it other than just to go, this is the tree. I sort of look like I'm making antlers. So we don't want to skip over the mind, because there's an old saying that I love, or a common quote you could call it, you've probably all heard it before, that is that the mind is a wonderful servant but a terrible master. And I believe that that is very true. When we become dominant in the mind and we're living in our head and we can't get out of our head and in our body and switch off, that is a source of tremendous challenge and struggle for lots and lots of people. You might all have had experiences of being too stuck in your head from time to time and feeling like you're unable to switch off. Can anybody relate? Yeah, totally. But beyond just being able to switch off, let's go a little deeper and explore this mind and explore how for you it expresses, because everybody's mind will have a slightly different tone or flavor in the way that it runs, in the noise that it generates. And I'm going to throw out a couple of examples, like common sort of flavors, but then I'd love to hear your experiences and have you add to this list. So there is a flavor of thinking and of mental noise that is very, say, off with the fairies. Somebody who's a bit of a dreamer, a bit of a daydreamer. They're always talking about what might be possible, but they're a bit ungrounded. They're very airy, like big visions, but not a lot of follow through and action in their life. So they're like the big, airy, dreaming noise. And you might either know these in yourself or know them in people around you in the world. And of course, as I'm saying these, there's nothing wrong with any of this. This is just like a lens through which to learn about yourself and to understand what might be going on, and recognizing that you probably have aspects of all of what I'm about to describe. I know I definitely do, or at least I have at different stages of my journey. So another flavor would be like the bully, the critical overlord, the like really controlling and rigid, harsh, judgmental, critical thinking. Then we might have thinking that is really like collapsed and wounded and heavy, thinking that is like really, the word that I'm looking for is like helpless or hopeless, really like, collapsed. There might be thinking that is really vigilant and fearful and fast and nervous. So those are just some super, super high level examples. What are some of your experiences? Maybe you really relate to some of those, or maybe there's others that you'd add to the list. Do you want to just unmute yourself and throw them out, or you can type them in the chat box? I'd love to hear your experience of like the tone or the flavor of what shows up in your mind. And this is an interesting one. Busy to-do lists. Okay, great. This is an interesting one because we're going beyond content into like the flavor or the tone that shows up, and so it's another way to think of and perceive your thoughts and thinking.
Yeah, so
there's go on.
So one that comes up for me a lot is you'll be late again.
You're late. Frantic, busy.
You're already you're running late. I'm sure you're running late.
Yeah. So like a preoccupation on time and like a frantic, sort of fast moving.
And associated with that is like, well, you'll be running late. So wherever you're running late to, people are going to be angry. They'll be angry.
Consequences.
Yep. They won't be happy with you because you're late. You're running late. So you'll be in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Consequences. And people will think you're bad.
Oh, they'll leave you. They're not going to want to socialize with you again.
Yeah.
You'll lose all your friends.
Yeah.
You'll be all alone.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That escalated quickly, huh?
Oh, I went through a phase where I'd give myself panic attacks because of this thinking, it became so ingrained. I'd get panic, like I could feel my heart beating faster.
Yeah.
And like, you know, that sort of feeling like your heart's popping up into your throat. And the thing is, it was totally me. It was totally unfounded because, like, you know, I was late, but I had never been told off for being late. Like,
yeah,
it was a flexible time frame that I had that I was working with.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And Catherine's just shared, it's just noisy in my head without any clear thoughts when I'm stressed, or ruminating on the same thing over and over and over. Yeah, so that's sort of like stewing on things and fixated on a certain complex or challenge. It's a really good one. And noisy, like that sense of white noise or just friction and sound. Who else has something to throw in? What flavor shows up for you?
I know what doesn't show up with me. It's the angel, you know, all this hairy fairy. No, that's against my religion.
Okay, so
Fun,
you don't.
fun. I'm looking at this, it's fun. As you say the last couple of times, in 1 day or 5 days or 5 months and 5 hours, it wouldn't even matter. And I train myself that way. That comes after many years in the army. You have to get out of the situation very quickly. You can't just live in your brain too much because things happen all the time.
Yeah, so you've got to take action.
Yes, and fun. Fun is very important to me. They have yes. So I'm I'm using myself. I talk people. I give them accents, so I hear it in my mind. And she's talking like this accent. This one wants this accent, and it cheers me up, and everything is wonderful most of the time.
That makes a lot of sense. So and it's perfect. I love how you shared that you have trained yourself. And it's true, you can really train your mind to offer up a new flavor. So thank you for sharing that, Terry. It's a really valuable example. And like your mind now will automatically offer, like, there's a solution and we need to take action, and here's something really playful, like I'm going to make light of this. So wonderful tone to exist inside of. Anybody else before we move on? Wonderful. So as I've shared, as you know, these tones of mental noise, whether they are that like critical overload or the busy, frantic and anxious, or collapsed and heavy, they all have root systems down into your body. And when you stay with a set of thoughts for long enough, depending on how much charge you carry around that specific idea or set of thoughts, you will end up with sensation in your body at some point if you stay with a thought for long enough, unless you really have no charge around it. But somebody might have, I'm just going to make up an example here, somebody might have been teased when they were young about having like big ears. Now, if somebody makes an ear joke, and everybody in the room hears the words of the ear joke, somebody who's never even thought about their ears is not going to think anything of that, and they're going to have very little or no sensation in their body. But somebody who's been teased about that and actually is genuinely like, oh my gosh, I hope nobody notices my ears and I'm going to put my hair up like this or whatever, might automatically hear those things and have immediate sensation in their body because they carry quite a bit of charge around that idea or those thoughts about, pointy ears being problematic or whatever. Suzanne, go for it. You put your hand up.
Yeah, look, it's interesting you should use that as an example, because I fell into that. So in my younger years, I actually had big ears. And
Okay.
so I would always wear my hair down. And so now I've had my ears pinned back, and I you know, I will wear my hair back more often. But as you were saying that, I felt in that heart center just all this tension coming through. So it wasn't anywhere else. It was actually my heart center. And as you were kept talking about it, it just got more and more. It was almost like this clenching in there. So it was quite profound that was the example you used.
That is the magic of unfortunate examples. And thank you for being so up for being honest and just being like, oh, hey, that's actually me. Because, you know, it's a very lifetime perfect example of how other people in the call might just have had nothing show up. But for you, who's legitimately had a journey with this, and I apologize, I was not intending to single you out in any way at all, that somebody who hasn't had a personal journey with this feels nothing, and you who has is like, oh my gosh, my heart, oh, she's talking about me. And I know that you do a lot of mindset work, so you would be really aware of, you know, not that becoming a story of there being a problem or anything, but it's so interesting to see how the root system still carries charge in the body, and that sensation was still there, even though you've had your ears pinned back, even though you now have a different relationship with that part of your body. It's such a fascinating thing that root system has power still.
Yeah, and I guess to take it further, none of the mindset came into it. There was no narrative going on. There was no, you know, poor is me or anything. It was literally just almost a tension within the body, and is obviously stored within the heart center. So for me, that was really profound, because I thought there might have been, you know, some sort of head connection, but it's not. It's more heart centered.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for bringing such a like real-time example. And that there's that like story or thought that this is, you know, I was just telling a made-up story about ears, and that it happened to be relevant, and there's been a history there, so it touched something, hey, even though there's not the live active thought of that being problematic for you, and there's no narrative there, as you say, but there's still charge and some activation. So it's beautiful little peek into the system, and a beautiful example for us all of how that root system can carry content and material years after something has no longer become like is no longer relevant in our lives. But then, you know, somebody will make up a silly example in a masterclass, or somebody might use a tone of voice, or you might smell something, and that nervous system, that root system goes ping, and there's something that gets activated, and it can be from a long time in the past. And so blessings to your heart, Suzanne. 30 years later, and I still have a feeling associated. Goes to show the power of trauma being trapped in the body. Absolutely. You are 100% right there. So blessings to your heart. And so these root systems are incredibly powerful, and it's really important that when you're bringing these mindset tools on board to change the way that you think and to expand your perception and to bring loving containment to the monkey mind, which is things that we're going to cover shortly, it's really important to be listening to the body as well, because the risk with mindset work, and this is a trap I fell into myself for many years that we need to be aware of, is that if you are just reframing and containing mental noise to make your internal world sound quieter, although that is a very worthwhile endeavor, if you aren't combining that with work that is releasing that stored tension in the body that Suzanne so beautifully just like gave us an example of how something can be touched and it's still there in my heart space. If you're not combining your mindset work with embodied work that will support the movement of that trapped emotion and trapped life force, then you're not getting into the root system. And remember, that's the 80% as opposed to the 20%. And so oh my gosh, Udi, that looks super comfy, Anya. Great. Amazing.
Oh. Is can it be a problem if I don't feel it in my body, or I have to learn to get it? What's happening here?
Wonderful
I don't feel
question.
anything. It's here and it's either resolved or it's tomorrow. Or
wonderful question. Yep, wonderful question. And so what happens if you've spent a lot of time not in the body, not releasing the trapped emotion, is that you can get numbness in the body. Yeah, numbness is a very, very normal state that people find themselves in, and particularly, knowing a little bit of your history, Terry, that
it's called protection. It's called protection.
It's protection. It's fantastic protection. Yeah. Knowing that you served in the armed forces, there's all sorts of things that you journeyed with that might have actually genuinely been really emotionally challenging. And if you're in a survival situation, you're not going to stop to think about, well, how can I move this through my body? And how can I make myself, emotionally feel better? You're going to do what's needed to save your life. And that, this is why PTSD is so common in veterans, because they get their physical body out of harm's way, but their emotional being is still, and they're unconscious, like their nervous system is still carrying the memories of everything that they have had to face while they were serving. And so coming back and going through the journey of processing and learning to feel again is important and valuable, and can be really tender. Yeah, because if there is numbness there, it's protecting something. And I've had a tremendous journey with numbness of my own for a long time. I spent a lot of years just repressing my vulnerability because I had no idea how to be with it. And I was very, very strong mentally, and had all of the right mindset tools on board, and I wasn't working with my vulnerability, with my heart, with my body, with my nervous system at all. And because it was frightening to feel, and I didn't know how. Yeah, and this is very common for successful, hardworking women, because they are doing whatever's required of them in the world and they're showing up for life. But there is a collective, and this is changing now, which is wonderful, but there is a collective narrative of, being vulnerable makes you weak, or being vulnerable means that you are less valuable because you're less productive. And so we gravitate to the mind, where we feel safer, we feel more in control. But actually, by shutting down the feeling body, cutting yourself off from that 80%, not only are you locking away parts of yourself and vulnerabilities, and maybe that in the moment might make it feel a little easier, but you're yeah, Suzanne, thank you for that comment. It's perfect, and I'll get to that in a second. It's really true. You're also locking away a tremendous amount of power, and energy and life force and aliveness that's available to you when you can move energy through your physical system.
It's unconditional. It's unconsciously. I didn't
totally
say
involuntary.
This, not this, yes.
Yep. Totally involuntary. Yeah. I really hear that, and thank you for being up for sharing. I appreciate it. And that is something that happens when you spend a long time
in difficult conditions.
or difficult conditions, and just practicing doing that, as you say, over and over again, it becomes automatic, because your system is designed to keep you alive, and this is how you've learned to stay safe, is to maybe not feel things that are a little challenging.
Well, I want to see what I'm missing.
Yeah, yes, that's very brave. Thank you. Yeah. And Suzanne said Brene Brown has done some great work in this area to normalize and empower being vulnerable. And she's done beautiful, beautiful work around vulnerability. Highly recommend that you check it out. So what I want to invite is that if you have like a critical overlord going on in your mind at times, or if you have a really collapsed despondent, like, oh, or if you have a really busy, like quick, frantic, like you've got to go do these things, you're going to run out of time, your to-do list, blah, 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 blah. Whatever flavor your brain offers up, or maybe it's a really kind, soft mind. And if that is the case, then that's wonderful. And I hope that that's the case for all of you, at least some of the time, that you are not your thoughts. Yeah. It's like you are not any of the thoughts that are going on in your head. And one of the things that we can do through mindfulness practices is getting some spaciousness from whatever loop is running there, and recognizing that that's just a voice, but that's not you. Yeah. One of my wonderful mentors says that your thoughts and like the identity, the noise that happens here, is like the little freckle on the little toe of who you actually are, and the beingness that you actually are, and the expansive being that you actually are, and recognizing that you can zoom out from the way that the thoughts sort of have this gravitational pull. They take hold and they become so loud and encompassing that they're very easy to believe sometimes that they're real. And then if they come along with, they've touched all of the root systems, so you're getting these physical sensations and these emotions that go with the story that you're telling yourself, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden it's really easy to believe that my to-do list is really long and I am going to run out of time, and I'm getting the heart palpitations. And so you get stuck in thinking that it is real, it is true, when actually those thoughts are not who you are. They're just noise. Yeah, and they can be wonderful information for you about what's going on inside of you, because you're like, oh wow, I'm really nervous about being late. That's interesting, isn't it? Oh, I wonder how I can meet myself in this moment. I wonder how I can meet myself differently right now. Or I'm really nervous about not getting through my to-do list, or whatever it is that is true for you, because we all have that inside of us. And I'm going to talk in a little while about different ways to work with the different flavors that show up in your mind, because working with the mind in a variety of ways is important, and being able to respond to yourself appropriately is really important. So when I say you are not your thoughts, and that's not real, in this trait, we're talking about expanding from fixed thinking into more expansive, flexible, spacious thinking. And to do that, we need to be able to challenge the things that you think that you know, the things that you think that you know about yourself and about life. And so I'm going to invite now an exploration of what is it that you think is true about yourself? What are the stories that you play on repeat, or the situations that you find yourself in that you play on repeat, things that you think are fact about yourself, or things that you hear yourself say, I am ... because I really believe that anytime something becomes too fixed or factual or known, it can become a cage. It can become like a trap that you get stuck in. Because if you assume that you know something, you often, like, it's often the full stop at the end of a sentence when you think that you know something, because there's then no need to go and explore any other possibilities, to open yourself to other ways of thinking and being. And I'll give you an example. In 2016, I came really face to face with, I burnt out really badly, and I made the decision at that time to give up professional sport. And now I'd spent 10 years up until that point striving for excellence in the sport that I was involved with, of equestrian sports, and had the goal to go to the Olympics, and had thought about going to the Olympics probably every day since I was a little girl. And I had to let myself be honest that actually my priorities and values were changing, and that I knew what was required to get me to the Olympics. I knew the work that I was going to need to put in. I needed to be willing to give that sport at least another decade of working as hard as I had. And I had to get honest with myself of like, is that really how I want to spend the next 10 years? And the truth was, it wasn't. And getting honest with myself and going through that transition of burnout and then giving up professional sport was a huge identity shift, like a huge ego death, if you will, because my mind knew me as athlete, knew me as aspiring Olympian. I was known in my community as those things. I was respected as a performance coach for athletes. And letting myself come to terms with, oh my God, that's not who I am anymore. That story of I'm striving towards the Olympics has changed, and it's no longer how I can identify myself. It's no longer who I am. I have to be willing to believe that this thing that I thought that I knew about myself, I was so certain that that's where I was headed. That was the trajectory my life was on, and that's where I was going, and that's what I was going to continue to go and work towards. And then that changed. Now, I had become, my ego, my identity had become really fixed. It had become really attached to this idea of, and it was a source of me experiencing myself as powerful. I was valued in my community, etc., etc. So my ego, my mind, was very attached to this label. And it was really reluctant to let it go. And there was this whole grappling process of learning to see myself as more than just that label. And we all have identities and labels and truths that we think are true about us, that maybe we're getting a source and sense of power through wearing that label. Maybe we're getting a source and a sense of ourselves in some other way through wearing that label, or through holding on to that story and that reality. And maybe it's not necessarily about us, but maybe it's about life and what is possible for us. A story that we just don't challenge, and ideas about what is possible or our place in the world that we just don't challenge. And those things can be a cage. And so you might already have some ideas popping into your mind of like, oh, I totally believe that life is this way, or I totally think this about myself, and I tell this story on repeat. But just in case you can't think of any off the top of your head, I'm going to just list out some areas of life where you might have some story to jog your brain, and then I'm going to open for sharing if anyone is up for sharing something that they see that they tell themselves on repeat. So think about money. Think about work, like number of hours that you need to work. Think about working hard. Thinking about whether you are somebody who is like, I think many of us here are business owners, but for people who are tuning into the replay or people here, is their story around, I'm not capable of running a business, I have to have a career, or vice versa, like I'm a terrible employee, so I need to have a business. Think about sexuality, and any story that might live there, any identity that might live there, any fixed thinking, and relationships, intimate relationships, familial relationships. My family is this way, ... I am seen this way by my family, ... Think about physical health and mental health. Who do you know yourself to be in these areas? And any others that you can think of. So is anybody up for sharing? I know that this is personal stuff, yeah, and that you're on this call with a whole bunch of strangers, but I really want to invite that there's a beautiful power in not letting shame keep you sort of quiet and silent. And I also invite you to take that with a grain of salt and only share if it feels right to you. But if anybody feels to give some voice to some of these stories or identities that they live with and inside of, and they might be really ones that you're like, and I'm not willing to let this go, Nick. I don't care what you say. This is the truth. This is who I am. It's staying. And if that's the case, I'm not going to fight you on them. I'm just welcoming. Tarina, was that you?
Yeah, it was. It is.
Go for it.
I had a few instances where I've really needed to change my perception of myself. When I turned 60, which was a few years ago, I decided to retire. I wasn't, and I've been working all my adult life, and you know, as an IT professional, a very responsible job and a really strong work ethic and all that sort of stuff. And I had to really think about, well, I wasn't happy with the work that I was doing. It was kind of boring. Been there, done that. And I wasn't getting the satisfaction from work anymore. And I sort of had to stop and think, well, I actually don't need to work anymore. And so I thought, well, it makes sense I should retire. So I did. But then I had to think, well, what do I do now? How do I see myself now? I've always identified as, this successful, very strong professional person. And then, it took a while for me to look around and think, well, what do I actually want to do? What do I want to do to enjoy myself and to feel satisfied and to have a fulfilling life? And, at the same time, I'd ended a relationship of over 20 years, within 12 months sort of thing. So that was a lot to deal with as well. And then I had to sort of see myself as a different kind of person and go through a journey of exploration to see who I actually was, because I was sort of setting the perception of being in this relationship and not even thinking about who I was, what I wanted, any of those things. So it was an interesting process to go through, just to take an actual look at myself and to go through, well, what do I want to do? What do I enjoy?
Yeah.
And start to care about that, which I never had. And since then, I've gone back to work because I got bored not working, and I've got some really good gigs, and it's interesting going back to work the second time. I'm doing stuff I really like and I'm quite passionate about, rather than just doing the stuff I'm good at. So I've taken a step back and thought, well, if I'm going to go to the effort of turning up for work, I'll make it worth my while, that I get a lot out. And when I do, then other people do as well. You know, people I work for appreciate and see that I deliver for them. But I do it because I want to, and I feel good about it, and I enjoy it. So yeah, it was sort of to stop being the professional, trying to do a bit of an observation of who I am and where I'm at. And as you know, like my relationship situation's changed substantially as well. and the relationship I have now is my partner, my wife now, insists on me understanding who I am and what I like. And if I get a bit complacent, she gives me a bit of a poke to make sure that I'm quite aware. So yeah, you can to give yourself the opportunity to take a good look and think and do things differently.
That's a wonderful example, Tarina. Thank you so much. And I love that you pointed to the fact that it's like you didn't know to stop and think about those things until they like popped up in your life, right? It's, you know, I didn't know, I would never have challenged the idea maybe I don't want to go to the Olympics if I hadn't had that sort of upheaval in my life that forced my hand to some extent, that sort of made me go, hey, life was like, hey, check this out. And I have since got a very different relationship with a lot more flexibility in my thinking and a lot more willingness to be challenged more gently on my thinking. And I like to believe that now my thinking is more flexible, and that, you know, that I am more able to take a look at things when the tectonic plates of my life are shifting a little bit, as opposed to there needing to be a big earthquake for me to stop and look at something. And of course, that's always going to be a growth journey because we're ever evolving and ever changing humans. But yeah, I really love that example, and I see it in life stages in the women that I work with as well. You know, you use retirement as an example. I also see it in women who are like returning to work after having babies, or who are becoming mothers and gonna stay at home with their children for a few years and are letting go of professional life. It's like, you know, there's all of these shifts that we go through in our time, and how we do those shifts and how we let our perception of ourselves evolve, and how flexible we can be, as opposed to being attached to an identity, a set identity that is the place that we get our value and our power and our worthiness from, is so important. So thank you for bringing such a beautiful real life example. Is there anybody else who would like to share? Go for it, Susan. I can't hear you though. Oh, there we go. Now I can.
You hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
What you were saying before when you were setting the scene resonated with me, because every single thing that you said has been my journey. I'm now a business owner, but I've worked for large corporations and government my entire working life. And I always felt like a free range chook amongst battery hens. And I was not the drone, and I was never allowed to use my brain. As someone said to me today, you've got such a great brain for improvements and efficiencies, but only until now have you ever been in a space where you could spread your wings and fly. So there's always been this get back in your box type of feeling for me in my work. My family is from a small regional town, very conservative. Well, they would absolutely be flabbergasted if I said to them, look, guys, you're quite racist and prejudiced. They don't think that way, but they fucking are. And it hits me to tears, no end, because I moved away from there when I was about 23, 1,000 kilometres away. I had no family, had a child, and saw life very differently from them. Went to university, did psych and social work, so that's changed my view of the world. But then about this, like changing our perceptions, I think too often life, we leave it an unconscious act until there's a tipping point in our lives. And for me, my tipping point was reaching 165 odd kilos and a girlfriend writing to me with a card, worried that I was going to die, an early death. So that was my tipping point. And from there, in 12 months, I started to lose weight, learn language, eat better. I ended my marriage because I knew that was the core of my sadness, and put myself on a new journey of discovery. And I actually had a purposeful plan to change my life. And sexuality was at the very end. I needed to address my intellect, my cultural intellect, my emotional intelligence, my social intelligence, because, I had been married for nearly 15 years and, things change. And then my business journey started about 5 years ago, and it incorporates a lot of the changes, the experiences that I went through, because I did put myself on that big journey of sexual exploration, and it's still going. But every time I go home, I get yanked. I feel that yank back in your box. Suzanne, I just want to share with you what you were sharing about that heart-centered feeling. I have a similar one about my body shape, because all my life, my mother has criticized me about my body. And this year I chose to have surgery. Took me 15 years to come to that decision. And the very first thing that she said to me was, "Oh, your bum looks smaller." And I just said, "Mum, I'm sick of talking about my body and you making observations." I put her in a place calmly, assertively, but she still comments on my body. So I've just like, rightio, I'm going to have to really work hard to segregate. But you talked about your ears. I grew up with a big gap here in my teeth because I've got baby teeth up the top, and I still have baby teeth. And my smile, I hated smiling. I never smiled for the camera. And the best thing I ever did was when I was made redundant, I took that golden handshake and I got my teeth fixed, and the power of the smile. But I guess what I'm trying to say is we shouldn't wait for that critical tipping point in our lives before we start to reach out for the life that we want. And that's advice I share to people all the time. Don't leave it until you're broken. Don't leave it until you're burned out. Don't leave it until your marriage or your relationship's busted up. If there's signs for you, there's green flags and there's red flags. So start working on it as soon as you feel the flags are waving.
And it's beautiful advice. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And one of the things so required for people to be able to do that is the willingness to be honest with themselves. So often we get to those tipping points because the yellow flags are like a yoo-hoo, and sometimes they're red flags and they're like woohoo. And we're like, nope, don't want to see that. It was certainly my own experience when I hit burnout back in 2016, that there was many yellow flags in my life, many that I was ignoring, and that I was working very hard to overcome and pushing past all of those signals and not listening to the yellow flags. So, when we're on these healing and growth journeys, being able to perceive and hear what's going on in the world around us, and how that lands in our systems, and so what we've created. Do you think that's also a lack of awareness of what the signs are? Great question, Suzanne. And I think that can be a lack of awareness, and it's also it's like lack of attunement to self. Yeah. And what I find with many intelligent women is that they are using their mental capacity to override the signals that are coming from their system. Yeah, they're like, I'm smarter than this. I know that I can keep going. I can keep enduring. Susan's saying she soldiered on for years, and so did I. And I know that I can imagine many people would resonate with that. Susan, you've also said having the courage / support knowledge on what to do to instigate change. Totally. It's like, well, I don't know where to begin. I'm taking a logical path because, like I was saying to Terry earlier, it feels safer to think than it does to feel if you've not learned how to feel. And so I'm going to think my way through. I'm going to use the 20% instead of the 80%, right? Because it's what we've learned to do in our lives. It's what we've learned to do inside of our system that is super mental dominant, is super sort of cognitive functioning dominant, and values intelligence over feeling. And so most of us have learned to navigate from here as opposed to from here. And so if we're not attuned to this, it just feels confusing and terrifying and a bit overwhelming to the mind that's like, I've got no idea how to go down there into my body and actually start to affect change. I've got no idea how to listen to those yellow flags because they just feel like, oh, what does that even mean? I don't know where to begin. And so it's easier because I don't know where to begin to just tell myself that this is normal, this is okay, and to keep on keeping on. Keep on soldiering on, as you said, Susan. And so the mind is such a great place to see some of those yellow flags, because the stories that you hear yourself tell about yourself on repeat is such a little clue. Yeah, even though we said earlier, you are not your thoughts, they are great information about what's going on inside. And if you want to know what's going on inside, then listen to yourself. It's like, just be the observer for a day. Notice what's going on. If any time you have a challenging feeling, you come in immediately with, it's going to be fine, like there's a solution and there's a something else to fix the problem of a challenging feeling, you might be more in the like critical overlord, controlling mind sort of space. You know, excuse me, if you notice that there's that frantic busyness as a tone in your mind, then you being able to bring some really loving but firm containment to that, of being able to notice it, catch it, and go, oh, wait a minute, I actually don't want to exist in that space. I'm setting some loving and clear boundaries with myself and my thinking right now. Oh, hello, Pooch, that's beautiful. Yeah. If there's a more like collapsed story of how you're not good enough, or that tone of hopelessness, that bringing some more movement and a life force and seeing a larger or more expanded possibility is going to be a way to work with yourself. Yeah, wanting snuggles, Pooch wanting snuggles. It's great. And so recognizing the yellow flags when they come up, recognizing the stories that you tell yourself on repeat about life, about you, and starting to have enough space from them so you can just see them, remembering that they're not you, but they are information about what's going on in your internal world, and then bringing some challenge to your internal environment by taking a different line. You know, if you are somebody who exists with that critical overlord, what would it be like for a day to try instead to bring a tremendous amount of compassion and softness and generosity to the thinking space inside of you. If you are someone who can get despondent and collapsed and a bit hopeless, what would it be like to move your body more and do some star jumps and ask yourself, how can I make this work, instead of saying I can't? If you are somebody who is frantic and busy and go all the time, what would it be like if you tried on for a day bringing more slowness, scheduling less things, noticing when the impulse to like be busy or to go or to write another thing on your to-do list comes up, to actually stop and read your book or make a cup of tea? Like noticing what occurs when you take a different route and challenge the normal pathway that is the normal thinking tone, the normal way of operating. And that is one of the ways that you will be able to come in and begin to crack through those cages of repetitive thinking, those cages of identity is beginning to actually make some different shapes with your mind. It's like, you know, we cross train when you're doing sport so that your body doesn't overtrain in a certain direction. It's like if you're doing lots of yoga, then balancing that with strength training is really valuable, because the body trains in a variety of different ways. When I was horse riding a lot, I needed to stretch a lot, and I needed to do strength training and like Pilates and things like that to keep my body limber and strong in a variety of different ways. And your mind is the same. You know, we talked about it being a fantastic servant but a terrible master. If your mind is trained to take a certain line, trained to make a certain shape, then increase the flexibility of your mind and expand your range in your mind by making it make different shapes. Make it bring compassion instead of rigidity. Make it bring possibility instead of I can't. And noticing always how the thinking touches the root system and what is activated in your body, because that is another way, you know, and you can pull on the tools that you've learned in the first 3 weeks of this masterclass series to tap that root system and to be working with what's going on in that space as well. So expanding your thinking tonight turned into a wonderful and interesting discussion because of like the varied sharing and contribution that was here. So I really appreciate the input and the way that this call has been so rich with your personal experiences and like really relevant stories and examples from all of you. So thank you for bringing that and bringing all of yourselves. And I will drop practices and exercises for this trait into our Facebook group, and they'll also be in the follow-up email tomorrow. And tomorrow we are also going, I've got another wonderful past client to introduce you to, who I'll be interviewing in the Facebook group. So come along and join in the fun and see what that's all about if you're free tomorrow. Otherwise, of course, tune into the replay. So thank you for being here this evening, beautiful women. I am going to hang around for a little while longer to answer some questions in case there are any. Otherwise, we are drawing to a close for our 4th masterclass. And thank you so much for being here. And I'll look forward to, thank you, Suzanne, much appreciated. I'll look forward to seeing you all very soon. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. See you later.
Oh my Lord. I hate to take your time, Nick, honestly. I hate to take you time for all this,
Not at all.
because that's oh yes, you wanted to tell me that if I'm in my mind, I'm not capable of compassion and of softness and things like this. Is that what you're saying? That if I'm most of them on in my mind, because I think and I do and I learn, but I'm an excellent Pilates instructor. So you know, I all the stretches and things, and I get to express there, but I don't. So I suppose that's body, but I don't feel it in the heart, in the lungs, in the things. And is something wrong with me?
There is nothing wrong with you, darling Terry. Thank you for asking. That's a really vulnerable question. And there's nothing wrong at all. You have practiced a lot of being in your mind, and I say this because of our other conversations that we've had as well.
Sure. So it you don't think it served me right? It didn't serve me as much as it could. I know it's I maybe because I don't know any difference. Any different.
Well, we will always, you know, our bodies and our nervous system and our clever little survival brains are designed to keep us alive. So you have done the thing that has kept you safe.
And that was this, and it was fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not. That's why I'm here.
And it's not that you're not capable of compassion and kindness. Of course, you're capable of those things.
Yes.
But there's like a possibility of being able to feel the richness of that compassion and that softness and that love and that care in a way that just might be deeper and wider and more expansive than what you have range for right now, the more you can feel yourself. So it's not that you're not capable of those things at all. It's just a deeper feeling experience that is available.
And can you develop it, you think, from your
absolutely
from your experience?
Absolutely,
you can. Where's the button? I'll press the button and we're all good.
I'll take the magic pill.
Yes, another thing, you talked about yellow flags. I didn't remember. What is yellow flags? I know the red one and the blue one. And what are
great
yellow
question.
ones?
So I imagine that you can think of like, thank you for asking, like traffic lights, you know, yes. Green is go, red is stop, and yellow flag, yellow is like, oh, slow down, something might be a little strange here, like what's going on? So it might be a signal or something that you notice in your world that
Get
is
ready
like,
or something.
That's a little bit concerning, or that seems a little bit weird, or I don't need to like pull the handbrake. I don't need to stop and get out of this situation.
But get ready.
But maybe I need to be careful.
Getting ready for whatever.
Yeah, preparing, being mindful, getting some more information. It's like,
oh my Lord, yes. It seems, I don't know. It's good. That's why we're here. You know, if you know everything.
Totally.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, learning.
Can I add something too?
Yeah, of course.
And I'm really sorry that we were a little bit late.
Totally fine.
I think, I don't know, I'm still a little bit confused. Because when we joined in, my comment was about stress and where we hold it. And Terry, when you mentioned that you don't hold it in your body, I was sitting here going, oh my God, well, how can I just be like Terry?
Yeah.
So I think, maybe just finding a balance, because I know with myself, my stress is like, I get so stressed, I can't explain the thoughts and I can't even think about what I'm thinking, or the same thing will just go over and over. And then I get really achy and tired, and it's like, I can't see a way out of it, you know, just got to sleep or.
Never happened to me.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well,
it never happened to me. Yes. I don't know. Obviously, we need to expand, you know, it's mind and body and everything, but I don't know. You don't know what you don't have. You've never seen. You don't know.
Can I chip in a little bit?
Pardon me? Yeah, sure.
I myself, previously, particularly in previous relationships and that, basically shut off my feelings to the extent where I didn't know what I felt.
Yeah.
Consciously, you said, I don't want to feel.
Yeah. I
don't
didn't
understand that.
try to express my feelings. I got shut down. So I accepted that and I just shut my feelings away for over 30 years.
And were you happy then? Were you happy is a very flexible term.
I existed.
Oh, that's not good. That's not enough.
So, and look, I wasn't miserable or anything like that. And I had things that, were fun and that I enjoyed and that sort of stuff. But my experience of myself, my feelings and my life are so much better now that I have opened myself up to how I feel about things. And it's been a few years that it's taken me to get there. And I'm fortunate that in having met Catherine, I mean, I was already on that journey and I was already going along that path. She was my masterclass.
She's your catalyst. It's beautiful.
But she was and what exacerbated things for me too, I had a stroke a couple of years ago.
Oh, charming.
And we didn't know I had a stroke. But my behaviour changed. Catherine didn't know it was a major change because she hadn't known me that long. But I knew. I just couldn't express it very well.
Was it life-threatening?
No. We didn't actually know I'd had a stroke.
Oh.
So it was just that my behaviour changed and I was sort of I wasn't able to think and plan as well as I normally do. And I certainly wasn't very able to express myself. And I'd get to a point where I'd be frustrated and then I'd have an outburst of anger, which, again, not really healthy. And then I went to the doctor. We got some antidepressants. That helped a little bit, but not enough. And then we went back to the doctor again and got some scans done. And I got a phone call one day and says, "Oh, Tarina, I got your scan results. You had a stroke."
Oh, good luck to you. I tell you what, I just said a thing. I know because I was living on my own for many, many years. I think that's just I think that's why I can't express myself in it. You don't look anywhere. You don't have to worry because I don't have to talk to someone in this depth. I can talk to people. I talk all day, but to this depth, you think that might be that?
I think that there's always lots of complex reasons why we are the way that we are when there's really clear, long-standing patterns. But if I'm really truthful, I think that the pattern of not sharing what's going on in your inner world is picked up much earlier than recent years of not living with somebody. Yeah. That learning to not share what's going on inside of us, learning to not feel ourselves as a foundational pattern is something that we pick up as children. Yeah, this stuff is often like in pre-7, really early templating in our early lives that we adopt, and then there will be predisposition in your psyche and in your sort of psychic structure that means that as you go through life, you will make choices that sort of further the patterns that are already ingrained and habitual in your internal structures and in your internal systems. And so an example, like I'll use myself as an example. What I mean by this is I grew up in an environment where I didn't get a lot of like really nurturing emotional attunement. I was very provided for, in like had all of my needs met, but didn't have very emotionally attuned parents. And so I learned to put away my vulnerability. I learned to just hide it from myself and from the world, because I learned that it was never going to be like, it was never going to be met. It was never going to be really cared for. And so I hid it. And then I went into relationships as a teenager with people who were not just not attuned, but actually dismissive and emotionally violent, because I found that acceptable, because that was,
you didn't know
like,
any better, maybe.
I didn't know any better. And so I'd picked up patterns, and there was templates in my original foundational blueprint that said it's okay for people to be not attuned to my deep feelings, to be dismissive, to be not available for my vulnerability. And so then I just continued to make choices throughout my life until I sort of figured out what was going on and wanted something different, and then went on a tremendous personal growth journey. But we will make choices about and create things in our lives, relationships,
So
circumstances.
protection.
Well, that we believe we are worthy of. Yeah, that we believe that we're allowed to have, you know, based on those primary core blueprints that we picked up. Yeah. So if there is
and you think you can change it in any age? You think you can get this a little bit to the left or to the right or something?
I really do.
I feel I'm so stubborn, because I you know, I'm okay. Now you're telling me, look, there is another way. Maybe it's the expanded mind, because I don't know what else is possible.
Well, I would invite that you showed up and got curious about my work for a reason, because there's some part of you that's like, I want something else. Yeah.
Indeed.
And you know, as Tarina just said, you know, she's 64. Is that what you said, Tarina? That's what I think I heard.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And would you say, Tarina, and I feel like I'm confident in the answer because of knowing you, that you are still changing and growing and evolving on this journey at 64?
Oh, absolutely. And look, I can relate to some of my behaviours were from my early years. Like
Totally.
Kids, I was the youngest of 6 children.
Wow.
And were raised is that, you know, you get on, you help out, you don't complain about things, and you help your family. So, and my mother lived that whole thing where she just basically was always giving to us as kids. And that was the example she set. So when I went into a relationship, my role was to give, not to receive, just to give. And in my family, it was, you know, if somebody needed something, then you help them, and they would continue to get your help until they didn't need it anymore. And in my family, they wouldn't ask, nobody asked for something that they didn't really need. Whereas the person I married would take and take and take and keep taking until after 13, 14 years of marriage, I was totally exhausted and decided to call it quits. Sadly, I went into another relationship that lasted over 20 years that was not dissimilar. But after that, I started to do more self-analysis, a little bit looking at myself, what the fuck am I doing? And I had a brief 12-month relationship, which was great. The woman that I was with really was supportive, which I wasn't used to, and was caring, which I wasn't used to. And I thought, well, yeah, there's something in that. And I had a few years on my own because I needed it. and I needed to understand myself and learn a little bit about myself. And I guess for you, Terry, I mean, you've been on your own, so maybe you need to do the opposite. Maybe you need to expose yourself to different people.
Maybe this is the reason why I'm alone. Exactly the reason. Yeah, I don't give anything for myself, because no, I don't think they get taking away from me, but I'm not used to it. And I thought, oh, really? And you, yes, and I'm really jealous. I'm jealous with people. It's so easy for them.
Well,
all of this.
It's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's absolutely not.
That's definitely a perception.
It's a thing you decide you need to do.
Of course, not a minute too late, too early.
I can remember being at home wanting to curl up in a little ball and telling myself, no, get your ass out and go out. So I'd get up, I'd go out, I'd go and socialise, meet people, that sort of thing. And I felt better because I knew I would. I felt better after having done that, but I didn't want to.
There's another thing that came to my
Didn't
mind.
have, that's all I wanted to do, but I didn't let myself.
Isn't it interesting that I talk to them?
The perfection of the three of you being the ones that
no, they don't
around,
even know what I'm talking about, do they?
They don't even know. Yes. Would you like to share, Terry? Would that be an exercise in?
Yeah, exactly. I'm gay, so I don't know that I'm envy people, but I know I come from a society that we don't talk about this. I'm Jewish. So you don't know that doesn't exist. I'm coming from Israel. No, and my family didn't know. So I'm used to those walls and those. It's not really walls. These are. So maybe this is what happened. This is how it started, because I don't talk about myself. I don't want anyone to know who I am really inside. Mm. So I think that's and I got used to it, and that's a big price that I'm paying, I must admit, because it gets you anywhere. It doesn't get you anywhere.
No, well, it just.
So you're going to send me some courage, Katrina? You've got courage pills?
Yeah, look, you're welcome to all my courage.
I need it in a pill so I can take it anytime I need it.
Okay, well, I'll see what I can arrange. But yeah, good. But I really admire and respect the fact that you're open. So thank you for sharing.
It's all Nick's.
My family was Catholic, and I remember I was really fortunate when I told my mum that I was gay. And I'd been married for 13 years and had 2 kids and all that sort of stuff. So it came as a bit of a surprise. And she said, well, look, if you're happy, then that's fine, dear. It's your own personal business.
My parents didn't know what it is. And how do you pronunciate it? How do you call it? And all that? It's interesting, coming from a small place somewhere in the whoop whoop.
Yeah.
Yep.
The second my mother said to me after that, it was, and I don't think we'll tell your father.
Ah, yes.
So I never told that, but it was fine. My family were all, yeah, okay, that's nice.
My ex-husband told my mom. My ex-husband told my mom. Can you imagine the situation?
Goodness.
So that's it. That's going to be my second book. I wrote a book, but that's a different opera.
Well, wonderful ladies, I'm going to draw us to a close.
I know.
Thank you so much.
Your time.
Yeah, it's all good. It was wonderful. Perfect follow-up discussion and yeah, really beautiful sharing. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, madam.
Welcome. See you.
Have a fabulous evening. Good night.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Catherine.